a boutique HR consulting firm and based at Delhi. And so we have uh, two experts, one announcement here. Amber, who was one of the key expert here and speaker today, unfortunately had some official exigency for which he could not say no to. So he has sent his message regret to everyone. So we'll be missing him because he certainly brings with him huge knowledge as a global leader on emotional wellness for Optum, which is one of the leading EAP firm. So we'll miss his presence today, but nonetheless, we have two great experts and which who would be able to do justice and fill up the space that Amber has created, but I'm sure they have enough experience around them which we'll be able to leverage on. So Ashwin, can you go on mute? Yes. So with that, first of all, let me welcome Swati, Dr. Swati Chawla. Swati, thank you very much for joining in. And Vijay, if we can put their profile on the screen. So Swati is a very, I would say, seasoned professional into well-being space, and she has been getting various awards. Vijay, can you move the screen to the next page, please? Yes. She has been getting 40 under 40, now 50 under 50, right? So you're fulfilling all the categories, Swati. I recently saw that. That's amazing. So would you like to say a few words about your passion about well-being and what do you do? And she represents, I know, global well-being responsibility for a leading MNC, and she's today presenting, coming in her own capacity. So, I mean, we respect that. So Swati would like to say a few words about your passion with well-being.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev. So, I think wellness and well-being is something which is very difficult to drive if you don't have a passion about it. So that's
Yeah.
one. I always believe it's when it says catch the disease before it catches you, and it's so relevant because well-being is all about how to prevent diseases, any sort of diseases. So right. So personally, I feel, and I'm also feel very proud that today I have seen how the trends have grown over from years to years in well-being. It's almost 2 decades of experience. When I started in around 2008, and today there is a huge difference of acceptance and of well-being in the corporate world. So I think I'm very happy, and also I'm very happy to see that drastic change of acceptance of well across the globe.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And we'd love to hear your rich experience in this domain. And so we'll just talk further. Let's go on. So Angela, so let me welcome Angela. Angela and Swati is joining today from Delhi. So Angela, welcome to the session. And it's a busy time, but thanks for taking time out. So she's joining today from South Africa, Johannesburg, and she has been my old colleague in IBM. We worked together. We had some fantastic time together, and I have a huge respect for her expertise into various domains of HR. She's a typically a learning specialist, has been into and diversified into leadership, managerial, well-being, multiple areas. So, Angela, what's your passion with well-being and wellness?
Sure, thanks, Sanjeev and Enabling World for our partnership over the years, but also for inviting me to speak and contribute to this discussion. I don't think I bring a particular well-being angle, but more the role of the organization to foster a culture of well-being and what role do managers play in that conversation. So my particular interest is how do managers behave? What do they need to learn? How does an organization need to support managers who are ultimately the ones creating the culture in which employees perform? And when we can shift how they behave, then we can also shift how individuals experience work and the workplace. And I think, just as Swati has mentioned, there's been a shift over the years. And I would say there's a little bit further to go, but there's been a significant change over the last, I want to say post-COVID particularly, but possibly before that. I'm sure Swati would know more.
Absolutely. And so we have with us Sushil also is the founder and also director. So he's also here and with many other colleagues. So I think this is a discussion will be free flowing. And before I go further into the session, just a brief introduction about Enabling World. Enabling World, as I mentioned, is a boutique HR consulting firm, and which Sushil and me we are running as co-founders. Just a 1 minute of introduction. So we are running into our 12th, 11th year. We have celebrated, we are getting to 12th year. So thank you very much for our clients, partners, friends, well-wishers, all of you. And the key domain that we are into, which is quite a few, is into HR consulting, leadership, D&I, well-being, of course, is last but not least. We're doing a lot of work there, and we do on selective basis outsourcing. I think that's just a brief introduction about us, because I don't want to take a lot of time about us, but wanted to share with you what all we do. Some of you would know us who are our regular visitors in this channel, as I call it, every month, a dialogue that we conduct through this webinar and panel discussion. So moving on to the topic itself, Vijay, thanks, you can stop sharing. So just as a context, we all, I'm assuming in our respective roles, we deal with well-being personally or in our work capacity, right? We all are dealing with that. Now, and it is good thing and a bad thing, because the COVID, post-COVID, Angela, that you are saying, certainly the awareness and the importance of well-being, it has started reaching where it always deserved, right? But I think there's a greater acceptance and acknowledgement of how well-being could be important for as a business objective itself. It's just not a good thing to do, but I think it's imperative for any business house, any corporation, any organization to focus on this, because I mean, as we say, an engaged employee is a productive employee, right? Leads to better maybe revenue and client success. But if you put a step behind that, even before, and if the wellness index is high in the organization, employees are healthy and they're well, only that they'll be engaged, then they'll be productive, right? So there's a step which was always there, but we have started recognizing it now more, I would say. So that is one. But I think today's session, uh, we all know about well-being, its importance, etc. But today's focus will be sharp on how do we create a personalized well-being intervention as an organization. That's the sharp focus today, right? And we will focus more on the solution. Problem we all know. We'll focus on what the key challenges are. But I think we'll spend more time on what has worked for various organizations, what are some maybe tips and the framework or the guidance on how can we make it personalized. That's what we'll focus more on. And participant here, audience, feel free to jump in, put your comment, keep yourself on mute to make sure that the session goes smoothly, but please leverage chat for putting your remark, question, and participate into this, contribute to this knowledge, because none of us is perfect. None of us, even Dr. Swati, may be most informed amongst all of us, but still none of us is perfect, because it's an evolving science, and we all will learn from each other. So please feel free to contribute during the session. Today, for the first time, we have kept it for about 90 minutes. Normally, we keep 60 minutes. And we realized we always struggle. We have more to say than the time. And there's not enough time. So always, even if 90 minutes will be less, but we have tried to keep 90 minutes, and we'll keep first 75 minutes on the panel discussion, but last 15 minutes will be on networking. We'll stop recording, just a free chit chat amongst ourselves if you want to network and further talk about it. So it will not be an abrupt end. So there'll be 15 minutes for free flowing discussion. That's how we have figured that out this time. Now, so moving on, the format will be Q&A. To start with, as a context, as we say, makes business sense. I was reading some Global Wellness WI report, right, which is a global institute which does a lot of research and generates a lot of knowledge about wellness and well-being. It says that the cost of wellness, right, if it is not managed well, can be as high as globally maybe $2.2 trillion, right? And I could not believe that the number is that high, that the adverse cost or the cost for not managing it well could be as high as 10% to 12% of the overall GDP. That was a huge number for me to believe, right? But Dr. Swati will check with you. Is that correct? Do you really believe that, or it's a number which is exaggerated? So I honestly, I was taken aback, which is as high as uh, 10 to 12% of the total GDP is a huge number, right? But $2.2 billion is what they say. So that means it's not a nice thing to do, but it's necessary. It makes a lot of business sense to do that also, right? But I think the biggest challenge in personalizing the wellness programs is because we are in state of hyper personalization in anything that we do. And Angela, you conduct a lot of training programs globally, right? And I'm sure you would have seen a shift that as a learning system in the organization, we are moving from a mass scale, structured, classroom trainings to very personalized trainings. People are moving into that. And the way we even watch movie, we buy things, it's an era of hyper personalization. And why not wellness, right? So I think one comment that I want to make, which was a little disturbing when I was reading, was there's a huge gap in the perception of what a CEO thinks or a management thinks they are doing well on wellness and what employees think. There's a huge gap, and it was not a statistical error kind of thing that is you can round off. It was huge glaring gap, right? And that is something I thought was very important, and the number is huge. For example, 96% of the CEOs feel they're doing reasonably good job for taking care of employees' well-being. 96%, right? When it comes to manager, they're a little more realistic. I mean, at least 86% of them feel they're doing a good job of taking care of employees' well-being, right? But can you guess, maybe put in the chat what that number would be when you come to workers, actually thinking what CEOs are doing and managers doing of taking care of them from the well-being point of view? And any guesses we were to put in the chat? I mean, I was appalled the number that it can't be such a 40%. Prabodh, you're saying around that. You're, yes, Palak, you're saying 35%. You're not far off, actually. It's maybe 50%. At best, workers or the employees feel the management is taking good care of them. That's a huge gap, right? In this era when we have so much of communication going on with the employees and we feel we know the mind of the people, so much of analytics is available, we are so off the mark in terms of the perception. And that's very disturbing because the way we will take action on and the planning on the well-being program will be based on our understanding of what the reality is. If our understanding is so off the mark, then our programs are going to be off the mark, right? So that's a little revealing number for me. And I thought, this discussion is very important for us to be close to reality and see what we can do about it, right? So I think that's the little bit of context. But Dr. Swati, let me begin with you. First of all, to set the stage, what do you see are the current trends in well-being, especially on the workplace well-being, right? What are you seeing? And I want you to particularly talk about the adoption and effectiveness of the well-being program. What are some key trends that you can talk about? And Angela, feel free to contribute in case you have anything additional to say, right, along with that. So Dr. Swati, from you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. And I think whatever you said is so appropriate and absolutely right. Uh, People do invest in well-being, but if they do not understand how to measure it, quantify it, or qualitatively understand what's the benefit out of it, then definitely it's going to be not that impactful. So, and that is where measuring wellness is extremely important, and understanding the fact that what exactly people are looking at. And you very rightly said this study that I've also went through, the difference of understanding about where what the people and the leaders think about wellness and what really employees are looking at. So that definitely there is a huge gap of understanding and accepting of wellness, and I think it primarily starts with understanding about what really wellness is, or what is wellness and well-being are. I mean, that perspective. So for some organization, the wellness is all about having a one session hour of Zumba or a yoga or a very basic wellness
Step
sessions.
count and the calories count and the step count at best.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what really the well being is all about? Well being is all about how a person feels, even if it is in their personal life or if it they comes at a work, how the occupation or the environment makes them feel, and how do they collectively feel about working at the workplace. And that's about how well being is. And it as simple as to start off from, I see many meetings. I've worked with a lots and hundreds of organizations, and when I look at their perspective of how they basically start a meeting, they will just start a meeting with, "Hey guys, I need this." Wherever
Mhm.
they're not even basic
I see.
acknowledgement of, "Hey, I'm so glad that you all are here. How was your weekend?" It's as basic as starting your conversation with an understanding and at least greeting and acknowledge every individual who are there in the meeting, that I acknowledge your presence. So I think the perspective of what wellness has been in the past year to what now employees and corporates are understanding, there is a definitely an improvement. However, I think there is still a lot of work needs to be done about how the wellness is looked after.
Are you
Even
seeing, Dr. Swati, to that question, would this gap be because of the way this survey would have been conducted? The workers' understanding of, the well-being may be different than what CEOs are thinking. Could you think because of that also?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, every line and every word in a survey will be differently understood by me or as a leader. So the first thing is that the survey is, created by the leaders themselves. So they will only create those sentences which they
It's the
really
way you
want the
ask.
answers to.
Sometimes we always say you'll get an answer the way you ask it, right? So I hope you are
Absolutely.
happy, right? They'll say, yeah, yeah, we are happy, even if they're not. All right.
Exactly. And sometimes, and that is where the need analysis first is the extremely most important part of checking on the wellness. So that's one trend which I see have improved is the awareness about wellness. So from at least from from a Zumba class or calorie counts to emotionally holistic wellness programs are now increasing to not even just about physical wellness, but moving on to social and emotional and other parameters as well. But still, there is a long way because I still feel many organizations are still not looking at occupational wellness, which is a key element of corporate employee well-being.
Hmm.
Intellectual wellness, which wants want them to understand that every individual has a need to learn, improve their intelligence, have a mentor, and that need nobody understands in the organizations, that people want to grow and have a mentor in their organizations who can guide them. How do I proceed ahead? So from very basic well-being programs are still okay, over the trends have improved, but more comprehensive, more targeted, more personalized, I would say. So those are there. Then the trends also talks about, I see a lot of flexible working hours, uh, arrangements that are coming in. The hybrid working also have now been a trend, which also talks about well-being. There another trend which is very close to my heart is the diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that aspect of well-being is also now slowly and gradually, it's a separate department altogether, but somewhere it is now, it is there are two sides of the same coin, the well-being and the DEI. And of course, I think one of the major important aspects to well-being now is how technology and AI are being introduced. So it's the starting
Mhm.
of it, but
We'll
the trend has moved there.
I think we'll talk. So there are some comments here, and I think interesting discussion that Zumba is not bad. Absolutely, I personally believe I'm not an
Yeah,
expert in Zumba. You would be. They're all absolutely good. I think the problem could be just staying with that. I think and expand
wonderful.
the coverage. Absolutely, I mean Zumba is. I'm not an expert. I'm sure Dr. Swati you would be. It's absolutely, and Dr. Gurmeet is saying that acknowledging and inquiring about the how the weekend was. See, I'll tell you my personal experience. If you are honest and genuine and authentic about asking. And if you're asking for the sake of asking, it happens sometimes you're asking, hey, how are you? And you don't even stop to even listen to the person, what he or she is saying, and you move on as if you never expected an answer, right? So I think being authentic and genuine about it. And Dr. Grimit, I'll tell you, during the COVID time, I know we did a lot of work on well-being with certain organizations. There are certain organizations which made it as a ritual, because sometimes rituals may start as a mechanical thing, but I think gradually it gets into our habit, and it also gives a perspective. Was is start a meeting with genuinely checking with how is everyone at home. Is there something I could do about, right? Something like that, as basic as that, I think. And a lot of corporates adopted that as a basic ritual. But I think a good manager will be someone, or an employee would be, who is very genuinely about it, right? And everyone cannot be, I right, but I think still it's a good thing to start, even if 50% of them are genuine about it. So it's not a bad thing to start with. All right. So from Angela, you are working with a lot of corporates, and what is your view? Are you seeing any recent trend on the workplace well-being? And then we'll get deeper into the personalization part, which is the key topic here. But just as a warm-up, but what trends are you seeing? What you hear from your clients or the organizations that you see from the workplace well-being is concerned?
Sanjeev, I think that one of the biggest trends is not a new trend, it's just rearing its head again, is that a lot of well-being is down to individuals managing their own boundaries. And that the boundaries have become blurred in individuals' life. It's got little to do with the corporate, because it will be easy and a nice abdication to say it's the company that's overworking me and putting all this on me and blah, blah, blah. But it really goes down to individuals' inability to identify what their boundaries are and unable to actually enforce them. So I'm doing a fair amount of work in organizations around exactly that, helping people to learn to say no, how to identify what's important to you, reframing what success looks like and what flourishing looks like for you, and figuring out how you can take action instead of waiting for the organization to change.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll continue the discussion. And Dr. Sati, coming to you. See, every person is unique, right? We all know it, right? And when it comes to especially well-being, your own my well-being, right? And all aspects of well-being, it could be financial, social, psychological, and the physical, right? I mean, these are the four key pillars, simply put, right? There could be many, many more, but let's keep it simple to these four today. Uh, it's very unique to me, and my wellness is dependent on what I, because of the workplace, right? What I experience at the workplace, but also a lot of it in my personal life, right? In my social life, family, my personal social situation, etc., etc., right? Now, if an organization, in your role, for example, when you're a global head of well-being, right? If you even think of personalizing well-being services, first of all, right? I personally see its intention is good, but it's hugely difficult even to personalize, because you don't know what the situation is for the person, right? So my first starting point is, how do you even know, what are the unique challenges person has? How do you get this information or insight based on which you can then devise well-being programs? So how do you get that?
Yeah, so I think personalization of well-being is extremely critical as well as very complex. Because one, as you said rightly, right? Everybody is unique. Everybody's requirements are unique. For me, probably I'm absolutely fit physically, but probably I'm not that resilient emotionally and mentally,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my target of improvement in well-being is very. There is a variety of things that people would want. The first challenge, or I would say the first step to do anything about around well-being, is exact need analysis. Before the need analysis, there is a word called trust, that how many of us would trust the organization that whatever details are they they are taking for my health will not be will be confidential or not confidential. So the first step is definitely clearing all, being very transparent about what is this personalization of employee wellness, and then very clear communication about what this information will be used for, what it will not be used for, and what is the benefit of entire process. I think once this entire path gets cleared, only then the employee has a trust to share that I would need a personalized well-being.
So there's so many ifs here, isn't it? So I mean, there's so many ifs. So practically, how do you do? I mean, you are running this program globally for large organizations. You have run that, but how do you build that trust? And there could be some legal implication also. I think in
Absolutely.
certain geography, personal and sensitive information, especially about health, there huge sensitivity about their legal ramifications of, what you can ask, what you can collect, and how it will be used, etc. So how do you cross that hurdle is the biggest question that I want to, get answer from. And anyone in the audience, I mean, also please feel free to contribute if you have experience around this, because to me that's a basic crux. Unless we know what the issues are, how would you personalize it, right? And there are issues about trust, about legal ramification, etc., etc. So
Can I jump in?
please,
Huh.
we need answers.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have probably a controversial opinion on this. So let's get the
Okay.
debate going. Is
Okay.
I wonder about the role of the organization as a profit-driven organization getting involved in the personal lives of its employees. And isn't there a boundary there where one's personal life remains personal? And as long as you are able to deliver the requirements of the role, then that's what's expected. When your performance gets compromised, then the organization has a responsibility to help elevate your performance through normal remediation steps that can include support for well-being. But it's only a factor when performance is not being met, performance objectives are not being met. The idea of an organization oozing into your your world that is actually your personal world it is questionable for me, because I might not. I'm very happy to share my status and whatever with my organization, but everybody doesn't need to. Why? It shouldn't be a thing. It's almost like the boundaries between life and work have become so porous that
Mhm.
they both move both ways. And I'm wondering
No, no,
if we allowed that.
yeah, no, absolutely, Angela. I think well-being, when it starts off, it's very clear that wellness is something that cannot be imposed on anybody
True.
forcefully or mandated anywhere. Apart from certain trainings that we would, suggest the managers and above would like to take it, like compassionate leadership, or other kind of trainings, or understanding mental health, what are the signs and symptoms, the all other kind of a trainings that would help improve the interpersonal relationship in you during. But definitely well-being is something, is a choice that employee makes. However, there are some employees who would want, I understand that there is a very personal level of well-being comes in, right? So I may have official issues, but I also have my personal life issues. And trust me, across so many years, we found that the top reason for people coming to EAP partners is about personal relationships. And that actually impacts their performance while they are at work. So it is a very, I would say it's a so it is merged so well that you can't separate an official well-being issue versus a personal well-being issue, because they would both intermingle. However, I do agree that well-being should not be mandated or forced in any way. Across the globe, it's the same rule, same law about confidentiality, legalities, and not intervening into the personal spaces of employee. But we can offer a lot of support. We can offer people a personalized well-being if they would want to take it. I think it's a good step, because when I work with Asian countries, I feel that they like the support and they would want to accept. However, when it is about the LATAM area, they will say, I am enough for myself, right?
So
So it's a variety.
It's a cultural thing. You're right. For example, in India in particular, if you're unwell and people don't come to check on you, right? I mean, you feel, oh, they don't even bother about me. And I'll tell you, when I was in IBM, so we had a business leader who was a British national. So she came and she was undergoing some health issue. And she sensed that people will pour over to her cabin and or to her home and asking about well-being. So she sent a small note anticipating that I'm fine. I would like my personal space, right? Appreciate your concern. I will tell you whenever I need to, right, about my health. So she anticipated because, that's a cultural thing that we will go and meet people, the person will feel offended. So I think coming back to this issue of getting this insight right, in my personal opinion, Dr. Swati, let's see what are the avenues with us, right? Number one is very strong is the companies which have EAP services, right? That's a very strong source of information. EAP services, guys, I'm sure all of us would know, is an employee assistance program. These are the organizations, well-being partners, you may call it by different names. So they have a lot of information where people in confidence go and seek their services. So that data is how many people have come with what issues. So that is one source of information, right? Solid, and it's a live data that they have. And they don't share the name, but they just share the trend, what kind of issues people are coming up with. That is one, right? Second, you are saying could be the employee surveys that you may do where voluntarily employee may share, hey, I want to share this. Do you think this kind of thing works? Is a practice in the corporates where employee surveys on health is being done, where employees voluntarily share some data? Do you think that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. People are open about having services. Who doesn't like free services for themselves, be it insurances, mental health, or doctor consultations, or emotional well being, or the physical activity, right? So, nobody denies anything which is coming there for them. And I personally feel that there are good service. If very important key point of service is to how you communicate about the service,
True.
right? The explanation of those sentences should be very clear, otherwise they're just gonna do tick 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 and just go in the straight same line where saying that three is like not, neither agree disagree and just tick mark three. So it's again, even releasing a survey is a strategic intervention. How, what, when, and how do you want to roll it out? So I think again, but I see people participating. I see people sharing their inputs. Anonymous surveys are very effective.
Right. So let me also ask you. So I think these are two solid sources that I can see from the employees during the anonymous surveys, or it could be through the EAP service provider. These two, at least I know. What about people on the ground, right? When I'm thinking of my earlier days in 85, when I started working in a manufacturing plant, we'll know everyone by name, will know what's going on in their life. I mean, it was known. Today, we are behind the screen. Sometimes we don't even know our employees because we are a huge workforce, and the way we are working in hybrid or remote working, difficult to even assess what's going on in person's life, right? What is the role of uh, the ambassador, for example, wellness champions, the organizations which have ambassadors or a wellness champions, on the ground, or managers, getting insight from them? How effective do you think it is that? And Angela, because you're dealing with a lot of manager stuff, right? Do they really have insight? Is that a trusted source for you to get an insight of what's going on with people?
I think this goes down to understanding and appreciating the various personalities that are in the workplace. And for some people, they're naturally inclined to inquire and care about people's weekends. And then there are a lot of other people who are not naturally inclined to inquire about weekends and so on. And so when we have a diverse manager population, who some will be doing this naturally reaching out and inquiring about, you missed the meeting, are you okay? As opposed to, you missed the meeting, where the heck were you? To same event handled totally differently. The well-being champion in an organization can play a very active role to support the managers who are not naturally predisposed towards care. And I don't think we need to be we shouldn't sugarcoat this. There are a lot of people out there, and I want to say I'm probably one of them, who my careometer is reasonably low. It's not the first thing I think of to check in with people in a group. I honestly don't. So I work with people who do. And so they'll be like, just calm down, Angela. Let's just have a quick check-in, see how people are doing, and then you can go into your full steam ahead. And they play that role to kind of balance the more driven, directive kind of managers that are out there, which there are many of. And that's often how they got into management in the first place. I personally worked worked with an organization. So I was the consultant in this, and I had a fairly serious bicycle accident. And the well-being champion contacted me. I'm a partner. I'm not even in the organization.
Wow.
He contacted me and said, we just wanted to know how you were doing. Letting you know. I was so blown away, like blown away. I'm not even in the organization, but somebody who says, I will be the champion of well-being because I naturally care. This is not then work for them. It's an opportunity for them to operate in their strengths and have it valued. So identifying what we're good at, what we're naturally inclined to do, and accelerate and leverage that creates well-being, because we're not working so hard. We're working in our strengths, and not making managers who may not feel so care orientated. Don't feel guilty about the fact that you don't. Here's some support structures. Here's some things that you can do. Conversation frameworks. So for example, that's one of the things that we do in Inspired Leadership. So we help managers with conversation frameworks. It's not easy for you. Well, here we go. Here, do this, and then do that, because that gives you what you need, even if it's not something that you would naturally do.
I'll just add on, Angela. You bring a good point, because everyone is not naturally inclined or interested or passionate about it. Everyone, because everyone has their own personality, preferences, and natural style. But in the role of a manager, sometimes it is important, right? It's not the optional thing or a choice. You need to be in today's time good at this. So I hear some good practice is, creating mental health first aiders in the organization. And there are certain organizations which make it mandatory for managers and for HR, for leaders, to have a basic understanding about well-being, right? What does it mean? What's the difference in anxiety and depression, etc.? Because sometimes if you're not trained, then you can't judge. You may miss it actually completely, right? So just like, in earlier days in factories, everyone used to have a first aid training, right? It was almost mandatory, if you remember that. It has gone away now. It's not as rigorously practiced, but it is not rigorously practiced nowadays. At least that's what I see. But I think the importance of having the right knowledge and understanding of the basic well-being, basic concept. You can't be a person who will counsel employees in case of mental well-being, but you should know. You should be able to spot the symptom at least, right, as a first aider. So I think that's a practice. And Dr. Swati, I want to know from you, what are some good practice? And I think, again, we are around the point, how do we gather right information so that we can personalize? We are still on that point, right? So, we are going to a little more debate and discussion around this, but I think EAP service provider, employee surveys are two solid sources as I see today. But we are talking about employee well-being champion or managers. Are they good source of getting insight? So have you seen that practice?
I will answer that in two steps. The first is, of course, we'll first talk about the ambassadors, right? I feel that I personally feel that the wellness ambassadors are a good step towards it, where organization does not want to invest in a dedicated resources like psychologists or the wellness champions. However, I think this is a good practice. However, again, it requires a lot of strategic process driven program. So, for example, if a wellness champion or an ambassador is definitely given a role, so that should be very clearly written approximately what exactly their roles are, because it's very risky for, so for example, if I am feeling not okay and I want to speak to someone, and there's a colleague of mine who I know is a wellness champion and he wears a badge, and I will go and talk to this person, he or she exactly needs to know what at what level he can contribute, right? He's not a trained psychologist or a
True.
counselor who can take those conversation ahead. That can be a little risk. So where we need to understand that what will be their role, they should be selected very wisely, because as
Yes.
very rightly said by Angela, there are some people are naturally inbound to be very compassionate, caring, which is really nice, right? And I think that should be one of the parameters to select those wellness ambassadors. Second is that how what level are they trained, and how do they pass it on to, right? How do they have passing marks or whatever, and how do they really have an ongoing I would say assessments for them, what they are doing. They should be encouraged. So I would say there is definitely a slight risk on wellness ambassadors, but if their KRAs are completely defined, the process is defined, they exactly know, okay, this is where the discussion is going, and I need to tell her that, okay, Swati, you probably, do you are you aware of wellness program? They do have an employee assistance program. Have you ever heard about it? Do you know about it? Would you like to check on this? Would you like to attend this session? Should I help you to book it? Those are the parameters where the ambassadors can help out, but they cannot cross certain boundaries of clinical aspects of
So
well-being.
I'll tell you, that's my, I'm very passionate about it. There's a concept, a very simple concept of three L's: look, listen, and link. I think the role of a manager
Yeah,
and a well-being champion is this, look for the right symptom, right? Listen dispassionately, right? And, with concern, genuinely listen to what person is saying and link to the right resources, because you're not going to there to solve it, right? I think
absolutely.
so. I personally like that basic framework. It really beautifully and simply defines what the role of a manager or a well-being champion could be, is a look, listen, and link, right? And that's a
Yeah,
huge thing. It's a huge thing because on the
yeah,
ground, there's so many people may not even, they will go unnoticed, for example, right? It's a small nudge, small lift, that you can say, and that will encourage them to go and take resources and leverage resources which are there today. I think and you can tell the number, most of the AP service providers that we work with, that we know of, their biggest problem is adoption, right? If you provide services, even maybe counseling
yeah,
services or financial well-being services, the adoption rate is very, very low, right?
very low.
Now we can't blame employee for this, that, hey, I provided service, you did not take it. I mean, the reason behind it, because it's not personalized. We have just made it available for everyone. Maybe we have not communicated properly. Maybe we haven't created that trust factor in the organization that people feels without any stigma they can go and avail those services, right? So I think there's a lot of things we have to do to make sure that the adoption really goes well. So anyway, let's move on. Assuming we have
Sorry, Sanjeev. I want to one more add on the manager aspects, right? So, wellness ambassadors would be different. The manager, I agree with Angela. I think all majority of the managers are not naturally, aligned to care, I would say. But definitely there must be some trainings where they are explained about how wellness and what wellness looks like, right? Because they themselves would need to, improve upon themselves. And lastly, another resource where you can find out what really works is, I've done it with many organizations. I myself have sat with employees on the ground and done a lot of focus groups to understand the real needs. So that is was the last.
Yeah, and I'm not going to let you move just yet, Sanjeev, either, because one of the one of the challenges with this for managers is, if managers have too high a degree of empathy / compassion, they don't address the issues. And as a result, you often are allowing performance to drop out of compassion for the personal situation, out of compassion to the mental problems that the individuals are going through. And so they just let the performance slide. The rest of the organization takes a greater hit. They are picking up the slack. Now they're under greater levels of stress. Overall, now we have a department that's having a problem, as opposed to an individual whose manager is addressing it head on with maybe some not the right tone of voice or not the right degree of uh, empathy. We always advocate compassion and kindness and respect. Use that kindness and respect as your tone of voice always, but don't be afraid to have the conversation. And because you've looked and you're listening, and now link them to the resources sooner rather than later. If you let it go too long because you've got too much empathy, you've got too much compassion, you care too much, you end up with a major, bigger problem.
So, there's a term called, which I'm sure all of us are aware of, is a reasonable accommodation, right?
Yes.
The role. So, and there's a slight difference. It's a tricky thing for a manager, doesn't know
Very
where to
hard.
stop, But I think uh, totally ignoring, going by rule book is not the right thing, because we are all dealing with human beings, right? But going beyond a point, it may solve one's problem but can create problem for others, right? So I think while the focus is on personalization, this topic today, but what I would like to say, I think the concept of reasonable accommodation is the right thing to do. It's a small adjustment by the team, by the manager, which should be there. But I think if it is beyond a point, then you have to make arrangement depending on the organization's policy, so that others don't suffer. That's the point you're making. It should not happen that because of someone, the other team members are suffering. So I think that's the role of a manager, to not just over focus on one. It has to take about the team in totality, right? That's what has to happen, right? All right. So if we move on, how personalization, how do we make it happen on the ground, even if you know the insight, Swati? I mean, if we know, yes, these are the issues, we got to know. One of the source could be a lot of public research which is happening, right? By, for example, Global Wellness Institute. There are many such institutes which are publishing some very solid research. Ultimately, organization is a part of the larger society or the ecosystem. We don't have to wait only from employees to come back, but we know a lot of trends which are going on, and there's a research publications which we also can use on. But the point, let's move on. Once we know that these are the issues, how do we go about personalization? I mean, is it use of technology? Is it making some bouquet of services available and let employee choose? What's the direction, Swati?
Okay, so when we talk about, so for example, now we have the need analysis. Everything is done, and we have certain pointers about the well-being. So the first step is that we cannot help everyone, right? Whoever chooses to be helped, wellness is for them, right? First and foremost, I think technology is very important at this space, right? When you have big employee base and we want to personalize, what personalization in well-being means that there is a personalized services that we are providing for the employee for a longer term, where we can actually also measure how it is going to help them, right?
Hmm.
So for example, now we have technology who 400, 500, or 1000 or more than 1000 employees are participating in this well-being. Technology is important. For example, if I have rolled out, say for example, a health check, right? Again, personalization. There should be a provision where what kind of health checks they are required to do. So for example, and of course, a lot of communication strategy need to be in place about why this is required. Not everybody wants to be needle pricked for just a health check, right? That was also a possibility. So understanding, so they can choose what what is the recommendation is definitely there, but who wants to choose it, it's up to them. And of course, post that, so technology will take it the first sample. For example, let's say diabetes management, right? And I think I would have very strong love for holistic well-being. So I personally feel that physical well-being is extremely important. So let's say diabetes management, 50, 100 people managed to have the test, and out of that, 30 people seems to be on the borderline cases. Now, these borderline cases are told that you will have a personalized program. Would you like to opt for it? And these are the terms and conditions, guidelines and terms and conditions, that your personal data will be shared with personalized well-being champion, and he or she, the clinical person, they will be taking care of you for next 6 months. And then again, technology would compare the results of the 0 month and the 3 month and then the 6 months, and
Okay.
see how the sugar levels are bringing normal, right? So that's one aspect of personalizing wellness to that level, where you are being given a personalized wellness, clinician, I would say, right? And they would kind of manage that. Similarly, in the mental health space, we can do it, but we need to be very careful when we are personalizing. Data security, medical information, all of that plays a huge role, that the data should not be leaked and should not be present on companies database or inside the organization. It should be done by the third party so that we are all secured from the data privacy laws.
All right. And Angela, are you seeing any an audience, in case you know of any good trend on the use of technology in personalizing, right? I mean, for example, in day-to-day life, I mean, I'm not promoting anything, apps like Healthify, etc., where you can feed your own data, which can give you a specific path. Do you know of such technology or app kind of thing being used? And we need to be sensitive, Swati, is that we are talking about all kind of sectors. So there's a comment here. I would like to hear more about how we can use this in manufacturing setup, right? It's not about the IT or the services organization where people are more, I think open to use technology in terms of app, etc. But there could be blue collar worker
Yes.
in the manufacturing. How do we adopt the well-being practices there? So that's a question that Ishika is asking, and then
Very
possibly will
beautiful.
be.
Ishika, I must say it's a beautiful question. Thank you so much for asking this. So Sanjeev, I've worked with multiple organizations, including manufacturing, etc. And there, I think it's a lot about, very rightly, that somebody who's not a tech savvy, how do they actually go ahead with this,
True.
right? So for them, I think it's a very there's another way of doing it. They already have occupational health centers, right? While they have an occupational health centers, you have a health sathi kind of format, again, like a well-being champion, who is actually looking after their health perspective, right? The data is managed by the central well-being person, and they are being communicated through local languages, one-on-one, face-to-face, and to ensure that the program is relevant for them. And especially when it is organizational or manufacturing industry, you will find a lot of well-being aspects, not just on emotional aspects, but on the ergonomics, on the hearing losses, or on the lung, because the chemicals are there, so in a lot of lung issues. So there's a lot of parameters that we need to check from alag differently. Also from mental, and there would be it's assumed that the stress levels are high, financial well-being is important. So very simple example, and I love one of the organization who does this very nicely. They do a very local language street plays on financial wellness,
Mhm.
educating the blue collared employees as well, and make them understand that how what is financial well-being and how you can help, and they educate through street plays in the local
Just like a
languages.
nukkad play type, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So technology-wise, in case you, I mean, I'm asking audience, in case you have heard of some good practice, please share in the chat, right? So do you think, Dr. Swati, is there some kind of, when you say technology means, one, you have mentioned some example, but are organizations using some kind of, are there service providers which use some kind of maybe app where you can give your profile and it will suggest you what are the things you should take, and accordingly it helps you choose what services you should take or not take? Do you think there are some, and we are not promoting any app, but as a technology, is it available?
Yes, yes, these technologies are now available, and becoming very, very fast spreading.
Mhm.
They, with the coming of generative AI, I mean, I think it's very, very simple to understand their data points and recommendations. So it's always, in medical and well-being perspective, it's always recommendations that people are giving out, and then the employees can choose their programs according to what they would want to focus on. So for example, if there is a BMI issue, then person may suggest it, like, what are your interests, and then they will suggest whether it's yoga that you would like it, or if it is Zumba, and then create a videos, will intimate a videos through it. So there are provisions of customized, personalized well-being recommendation and suggestions.
Okay.
So maybe
Angela?
I can jump in here.
Yeah.
And I was just reflecting on the learning journey that we do for managers called Leading a Culture of Wellbeing. And it's not advocating for the use of tools. It's advocating, or what we advocate for is the use of personal connection, because you as a manager need to know your people and have a human connection. And if you have AI doing the heavy lifting, then what are you there for? So it's very much helping managers to have conversations that understand what everybody needs. And one of the frameworks that we help the managers with is a well-being one-on-one conversation guide. And out of that is a template that asks the individuals, you ask them, like, don't wait for them to tell you, ask, what are your interests? What are your passions at work, outside work? What is your area that gives you the most joy in the work? Okay, didn't know that. And then a last question, what does work-life balance mean to you? What does it mean to you? And an extension on that is, has anything changed in your life that would require me to know about it? Maybe your children have moved out of home. Maybe they've started a school that needs you to get them there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Like what's changed in your life that will affect what work-life balance means for you? What are their needs? What are their challenges? Ask them. What help can I do? What help do you need from me to help you? And that's just the conversation that a manager should be having with their team members that can get them to self-disclose whatever they're comfortable with the impact of workplace well-being. And I mean, we're making the assumption here that 90% of people don't need full-on psychological assessments and help and so on. We're just normal people bumbling along through life, doing the best we can with what we've got, which is a lot of people. So, you know, I'm all for the human relationship as opposed to the digital support tools, which can be very effective, I'm sure, but they're not a human. And that's the part that we actually play.
So, Angela, I think my personal view is it's not either or, it's and, because when you especially, and in my experience, my view is absolutely there's no substitute human connection. But with the way the new workplace, the way it is looking, with a lot of gig workers coming, a lot of remote hybrid working, I think gradually the challenge or the impact of a manager having, I'm not saying that that's always the best if that can happen, but if not, then what are other tools available where you have a large workforce working remotely or different timings? The workplace itself is changing dynamically. Sometimes having this tool to help as an add-on, not limiting only to that, is possibly a good addition. I would particularly say, right? So
I will also make one comment. I mean, just wanted to add on here is one, of course, it has to be a mix of both, right? And technology wise, what we are also saying is the fact that today I may not remember what my diabetes levels were in the last 3 months. So there should be some record which we can compare, and that analysis can help us to deal with effectively. The second is that even though there are a lot of chatbots saying that, hey, how are you? So of course it is not very personalized. You do feel that you're talking to a chatbot, which is really not real, right? Definitely the managers and the have to be a compassionate, and that is where we were talking about compassionate leadership, and that is one of the elements where the manager would come up and say that, what is it, you have been absent for 5 days, I've never seen you like this before, right? So can I help you, and what is it that I can help you with? But however, I also see trends over the world, over the globe. Some part of the world, very comfortable in having chats as a discussion point rather than a call or a face-to-face counseling sessions. They are more comfortable with chats. They are very comfortable and they would want to do that. Even video counseling sessions where remote and virtual world are coming together. I think it's a mix of everything. It's emotion definitely, human touch definitely, technology, but yet is also very integral part of well-being to monitor, analyze, and take actions.
So absolutely, I think one of the simpler way, I mean, hyper personalization is another extreme, right? I mean, which is tough on some subject like well-being, which is so unique and complex, right? There are different pillars, but I think a simpler approach, as far as personalization is concerned, could be employee segmentation, right? Or the creating the personas, right? And Angela, I'm asking you, you are a design thinking expert, right? As simple as, I think so. Am I wrong?
That's, the word expert I treat with great respect.
Okay. All right. So, in terms of there's something like employee segmentation itself, for example, and we were working for a company, or I remember it, I mean, recently, a large bank, multinational bank, and they were thinking about the same issue. How can we personalize? But it's a huge scale. Now, you can't go to each employee and take full survey and do very personalized service, may become very difficult. But I think a simpler, a balanced approach could be employee segmentation, for example, or creating a personas, for example, like young mothers, for example, they would have a very unique need, right? All of them, right? For example, a person who is may above 50, for example, right? Aging population, people who are next 5 years, they're going to retire, for example, their need could be slightly different. Generation, a young engineer, 22 years, who's coming, right? Healthy and fit, right? Their sometimes needs could be slightly different, isn't it? Have you seen any one of you that this could help in creating a right balance where you're not putting everything all solution, paint everything with the same brush, or there is super hyper personalization which is complex today for data privacy, etc., etc. But there could be a practical way of looking into it by employee segmentation and maybe doing what their real needs are and at least do that. Will that be a practical way of doing this?
So I'm not sure I'm going to answer you exactly the question, because I think as many personas, you could come up with 1,000 personas for your 1,000-man workforce, because that's how unique everyone's situation is and what their basket of needs looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more effective way is to have a buffet of programs and solutions that are available for people to select what according to their plate. This is the
And
plate
let them
that
choose. And
I have.
let them choose.
Let them pull as opposed to being pushed. So I'm a fan of avoiding the policy word.
I'm not saying that.
This is the mandate and the policy, and this is the approach that we will be taking. I'm like fully against that. And rather, here's an experiment, to use the words of Agile. We're experimenting with this service provider or with this AI tool. It's an experiment. We'll re-look at this in 3 months' time, but it's now added to the buffet of well-being meals, well-being food groups that you can select from. And our role as HR and as leaders needs to firstly have a rich and diverse buffet that combines the high tech with the high touch, with the global approach, so group things and personal things. So just a good buffet, and then educating our managers on how they can use the buffet, and for sure staff as well. But the managers are the link between the organization's provision and the individual's consumption. They're in the middle. And so if you're looking at the look, listen, and link, they've got to know what they've got behind them to link their employees to. And that will keep changing. So it keeps the conversation going on, well, we've sunset this EAP commitment, but we've ended up adopting, or we're experimenting, adopting this thingamabob, that new AI chatbot. So we're experimenting with that. That's part of your buffet now. So the hyper personalization is by the person, not by the organization.
So I think I think what you're saying, alluding to, that's the best thing, that you create things available and you can't force anyone. Let person and educate and create enough communication. Hey, these are the things available. Depending on your need, you are welcome to pick up and choose. But the adoption rate is still very low, right? Is it a cultural thing, Swati? That I'm talking mostly about India. We have audience from all over, but I'm saying largely, suppose India as a developing country, right? If you're talking about this concept of self-service, is it mature? If it was so, then the adoption rate would have been high, right? So how do we tackle, because if you have to reach that personalization of the service, then there's a lot of onus on employee to avail the service which is available at least, right? But today, if they're not able to do, how can we encourage them to? How can we bridge this gap where service is available, person has a need, but still they're not taking it? How do you solve that problem?
I think for this, the most, I will just give you an example. Many years back, when I was working with one of the organization and I was just interviewing a focus group, and then somebody asked me that, I was in need of, say, one, two, three things, and I was looking around for understanding where I can get this help. And at that time, uh, employee assistance program wasn't that available for all of them. So, but they did had one of the you know a partner who had an app, and they were
Mhm.
listed the programs in that app. Now
Okay.
this employee said, I never got to know that there is an app and this consultations are available there.
So it's all about creating awareness.
Communication,
Hmm.
communication strategy, destigmatizations of, especially on the mental health front, uh, because physical and health and gym on things and other fitness etc is okay with
Physical.
them to utilize. People really appreciate doctor consultations free of cost, because that's again country to country, but yes, I think Asia is very comfortable and okay to avail those. Key element is, how do you communicate your programs to the
Hmm.
employees till the last employee? I mean, today if I tell them, do you have your EAP number in your mobile phone, they should save it, but a
I'll
lot
tell
of
you.
us are
I'll
not
tell
aware of it.
Yeah.
personal experience, Swati and Angela and team. We do, as Enabling World, we do a lot of sensitization programs on well-being because that's one of the core pillar for us, right? And for various clients, and these are, large multinational organizations, right? I mean, thousands and thousands of employees, some of them. Some organizations will come, pick up one webinar, move on, right? It doesn't create any impact, right? But there are organizations which, based on the data that they get from EAP service providers, they design programs exactly in the areas where they see some trends going on. So there is some linkage. And if you do consistently over and over and over, after each program, there's always a page, right? Reminding that, hey, don't try to solve problem yourself. There are friends available, there are services available, and must be, for example, every month there one organization I won't name has at least 6 to 8 to 10 such webinars every day, right? And webinars are knowledge sessions, short capsules, right? But after every session, there's a reminder, hey, there are these services available, please come and use it. Over the years, I've seen they said, I went and asked them, how was the program? They said, leave aside the program. But I think our adoption of EAP services has gone up because people have started becoming more aware of that, right? So I think one of the learning that I'm taking here is, don't assume you have issued a circular, people will get to know it, they'll start using it. It doesn't happen, right? Be
Yeah.
creative, be consistent, regular, over and over, whatever works, maybe street play or whatever works in your organization depending on your culture. Create that communication so that is the best thing. You have a range of services, people are aware, they can come and pick and choose what they want, right? Rather than forcing that everyone has to go through that. That's the best thing. So I'm just sharing that experience that we had. They said program is fine, but I think it has helped us improve the adoption of the well-being services that people are using. So that was the
Hmm.
biggest takeaway, more than the webinar or the program or the sensitization workshop that we did, right?
I think to reinforce this is that often the elements of the program are actually very effective, but because people don't know where to find them or how to use them, they don't use them. And so we end up changing the program, which maybe doesn't need to be changed. We just need to change how we communicate, organize, make it more the marketing of the program. Don't change the program. And I remember from our days at IBM how complicated everything was. Like, just simplify, make it easy to find, make it one click, 3 offerings. Sure, underneath 3 offerings, there might be more nuance, but simplify, clarify, and it's like the signs on the, you put your values up on the wall. Everybody walks past them. After 2 days, they become part of the furniture. So you have to keep rebranding, even though underneath you might have the same stuff. But because it's got a novel picture and it's got a new color and now it's got a new vibe, actually people are like, oh, novelty, let's go back in again. 100% agree. You've got to communicate differently, communicate with a different approach, but it's not necessarily that the content is wrong.
I'll tell you, Angela, something. I was talking to someone and they were sharing some best practice. I said, how do you communicate? Because I was talking again about the adoption. They said, we have found a very creative way. I said, what's that? He said, in toilets, we use about well-being services or the number what services they can use. He said, you have undivided attention for 1 minute or 2 minutes of the employee, right? They have nothing else to do. So I think capture that. I mean, I found it funny. They said actually it works for us because any place, be creative about what works in manufacturing or any place where employee will pass through the main gate or etc. They said we found this very effective. Any important communication, put it in the toilets. I said okay.
And keep changing it.
And keep changing it. Keep
Keep changing it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And on that point, there's something called TOM, which is top of mind, right? And if, for example, if you have a webinar or whatever survey, if you send it thrice in some or the other form, maybe the manager comes and talks about in the morning in the hurdle, say, hey, this is a program which is coming. Then you send an emailer saying that, hey, this program is coming. Wellness champions are coming and talking about minimum three thrice. If you send it, it remains in the top of your mind, right? So again, I think when I look at well-being, communication is very, very important key strategy in playing the role of how you position your wellness and how it is perceived. And especially with this generation, you have to be innovative, you have to be creative, you have to get fun, you have to get involved. So
It's a
this
marketing
generation
job.
is even tougher. Yes, yes,
And I
absolutely.
mean, it circles right back to your first question. I think it was the first one, Sanjeev, around the measures on expectations. Is that executives are assessing well-being as they're doing a lot and employees not so much. And that's because of a misalignment of expectations. Probably would be closer if we communicated the same thing in a different way. And it goes back to the communication gap, which is underneath awareness of what is our expectation here. Like it all goes back down to communication at the end of the day.
All right. So one question, maybe Swati, to you, in hybrid working, what additional challenges? Because personalization is a challenge, right? And the way we are discussing, we may not have, I mean, audience here, a very ready-made solution, some magic pill here. Oh, this is how it can be done. We are together discussing what are some best practices, what is something necessary to be done, like insights about employees, about their needs, before even you think of hyper personalization and the perception gap. That's huge because at least what we should do is to be real closer to the ground. Now, the hybrid working, I was reading some report which says the workplace loneliness is, about 50% of the employees feel sometimes at least some element of loneliness at the workplace because you're sitting alone. You don't know, what you need to do, and they can't even suddenly when you are at the workplace. You can, hey Angela, I need this help. Swati, I need this help. Can you help me with this? You can walk up to someone. But when you are working remotely and hybrid, and if you're new to the organization, sometimes you even don't know, should I ask, should I not ask? Then you suffer within yourself, right? And then, so is hybrid working or remote working, which is not in all the industries, and they're also going back gradually. People are going back. I mean, for good or bad, I don't know, but at least people are going back. What are additional challenges does it pose as far as personalization of well-being services is concerned?
Blurring of the boundaries is something that's the first step, right? The blurring of the boundaries as to when we need to stop working and when we have our personal life, right? I think that is something which is a very big challenge, which needs to be dealt with. And I think there will be a lot of work required in this field to be ensure that what is it that we need to come up with. The second is that, of course, the social well-being perspective, where we are together as a team. When we are working as a team, there is a project that needs collaboration. So what are those days when everybody should, that team should ideally be on the site? And I trust me, when you work as a team and you work face to face as a team, it creates a huge difference. And that is why those annual sales meeting or annual together programs are generated, because it does increase a bond amongst the employees, right? And amongst the hybrid is again, about the technology, whether it's working, internet not working, they seems very small thing. Whether internet is not working and I'm not able to answer, I'm not able to meet my manager because she's or busy, should I chat? So the first thing that you said is about the new employee. There should be definitely an onboarding process, a good onboarding process
So
where there is
Swati,
the
I
clarity.
think one clarification, because we are running a little short
Hmm,
of time. I think in the personalization of well-being services,
hmm,
the challenge is the hybrid working or remote
hmm,
working, makes it much more difficult, or it is easy.
hmm.
Specifically on that, what's your observation?
I think it's little difficult, but I
Mhm.
think there are ways to make it happen. So, for example, fitness level, if we say there is a group session on Zumba, but you can have a membership of the nearest gyms to those people, right? So I think possibilities are always there. I think there were
But it
times
makes it
that
harder. It makes it
it
harder
makes it
to
harder,
makes it harder.
more
Mm.
innovation, more tie-ups with other partners, and those partners should be available. So it is possible, but it's a harder.
All right. So there's a question here from Rashi, and Rashi, thanks for contributing, actively in the chat. She's asking, are there any emerging trends on personalized well-being worldwide? I mean, anyone wants to? I mean, I can contribute a couple of points, but I'm not an expert. But still, uh, Swati, you or Angela, you want to share something? What are some
I
global
think
trends?
worldwide it's a big world out there, and if we look at worldwide trends, we'd have to look at China and say, what are they doing, and then India, and then that pretty much covers the majority of the world. So I think that's quite a tough one.
So I think the couple of things as a starting, Rashi, that's a very good question actually, because what's happening? What are some best practices that we can see around? But I think there are a couple of things. One, the analytics about employees' information. I think there is an advancement. There's a lot which is happening around that, right? And the science is maturing gradually, right? Insights about employees. That is one trend which is going, which will create a good base for you to decide on. But I think the biggest change trend which is happening around the world is about usage of technology, whether it is form of an app or by the AP provider or by the organization. There are different AI based apps which are there, and I'm not saying that just stay with that alone, but it is helping in terms of you defining and personalizing your well-being services. That's what I'm aware of, and Swati, you can add on to that.
Yeah, I think if you look at worldwide, I think what we can actually look is that there is a global framework that, okay, these are things that you can do. There is definitely a structure like having 8 dimensions of wellness or all dimensions of wellness, or what certain activities can go into it. What is some policies that you can try to make around well-being, but it has to be culturally aligned to each country, each
Great
space.
point.
um, it is a mix of cultural, and it has to be culturally adapted to those perspective. You can have a little framework, you can have a strategy, but you can't have exactly what you really need to do globally standardized, no, but you have to have amalgamation of your cultural things into embed that into your programs.
So I think one of the trend also is, that's a great caution reminder that you're saying that everything may not work everywhere, right? So you have to be culturally sensitive. But I think the another trend that I'm seeing, Rashid, again coming back to your question, which is a very good question, is sometimes it was limited just to physical health earlier. The concept of well-being and organizations participation. But I think the definition is getting wider, and it is becoming a 360 degree. I mean, I know there are a lot of organizations doing financial well-being is a huge hit, and so many clients we're working on. Never earlier was there was any such kind of assistance given to the employees. So I think uh, the services that organization is giving it is moving beyond your just a physical health. It is moving to your financial health. It is moving to mental well-being. It's anyway there for quite some time now, and other social health also, because I know there are organizations doing a lot of programs on parenting. I mean, you may ask, what is it that organization has to do about parenting, right? I mean, it's none of their business, isn't it? They're meant
I,
there to maybe create
it's a
some
big
products
hit.
or right.
It's a big
But
hit.
the program on relationship program
Yeah.
on parenting is a huge hit, let me tell you. And the reason is, today the institution as a society is changing. Today you have quite a bit of nuclear families, young parents staying alone in cities, right? They have no idea of what is in store for them, and they are anxious. So providing those services becomes helping. So I think another trend, Rashi, to answer your question, could be the the definition of well-being is moving beyond just the physical well-being. It is moving beyond those, depending on what the needs and the resources are, using of the technology and a lot of analytics in terms of understanding employees, insights about employees through various of, tools and surveys, etc. It is happening, right? Anything you want to add, Angela, to that?
Somebody's using an angle grinder, so I'm going on mute and minimize my contribution because it can be very noisy here. Don't know why. Yeah, I think the whole broadening of the conversation into well-being, it's almost just become life. All subjects around life are part
Mhm.
of your well-being. So if it's from workplace stress to life stress, from financial stress to parenting, to single parenting, to elderly care, to pretty much life. The only thing I've not seen so far is things like home renovations. Like that seems to be out of the scope of well-being. It's like what's excluded is actually a smaller group than what's included in
So you
that. And
said.
that's because we're whole people. We work as whole people. So you can throw everything in the bundle of well-being
But one
topics.
has to be
It's
practical. You have to prioritize, because you can go all over, right? I mean, it's very difficult, but you have to prioritize what is relevant and culturally what is sensitive, what be valued by the employees. I mean, don't just throw things which they won't value or they don't need, right? So I think that understanding and prioritization, making it simple, communicating, these are some of the things. But one of the question here is, which I was also about to ask, is that how do you assess? It's easy to ask, but very difficult to answer, the effect of the well-being programs that you're running, right? It could be as simple as adoption, for example, whether it is being adopted, people are aware, as basic as that. But is there any good metrics, Dr. Swati, particularly you, I'll ask, because you are an expert on this subject than any one of us. How do you measure the effectiveness of the well-being program? How do you do that in your role? When you do your
Yeah,
annual
I
appraisal, how do you justify you're doing a good job?
So I think when, as you correctly said, it's a very difficult way to how to quantify well-being programs. So one, of course, is the adoption. The second is different organization would cater to different well-being scores. So today, if I, and again, it's a anonymous, programs that you do, and again, you will have a create a score for your organizations through your checks in or through your physical well-being scores, or it's a cumulative well-being score. So a lot of vendors or what a lot of well-being providers would have these scores already inbuilt in their applications. So one is, of course, you look out whether this well-being score is improving or it's kind of decreasing. So that's one of the quantifiable. uh, this can be done internally as well as externally. It totally depends on. It's better to do it externally because it's about data, and when it's coming from the third party, it makes more sense. Then it's also about how many. It's a very traditional one. How to measure well-being is about productivity. It's all about quality of services, the productivity that is coming in, the attrition rates, whether they are high or low, how that they are impacting their programs. What is the general overall survey health says? Yeah, the
Hmm.
internal surveys that we roll out. The fourth is about how the external auditing companies can come in and then they rate you towards anonymous survey from external parties. How do, like, there are a lot of companies who audit you and then rate you on your well-being
But only
scores.
one caution, Swati, I would say, is sometimes when you create awareness, suddenly number of employees reporting they have diabetes or they have mental health issue or stress goes up, right? It necessarily may not mean that, oh, you are going down on your well-being. Maybe it's just people are getting more aware, more cases are being reported through the EAP service provider. That could be that. So I think there has to be caution in just
Absolutely.
taking the number as such, right? So there is a bit of caution there, right? All right. So we are, I think, just a couple of announcements we need to make before we wrap up. And I know we have consumed our networking time into continuing this discussion was so interesting. I, in fact, missed the timeline in my own mind that we had to stop at 4:15 and then do networking. But anyway, because the it was so interesting, at least I was learning quite a bit. So there are a couple of announcements we are making, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, keep putting in the chat. And Swati and Angela, if you see those questions, keep putting your comments in the chat if you want. So absolutely you can do that. So I can, Vijay, can see a white screen, but if you can move on. I mean, I can't see a presentation. So I think uh, just a couple of announcements that we as Enabling World, we will put in the link, to a lot of employee well-being services that we provide. We also have a well-being calendar, actually, very interesting calendar, because a lot of well-being experts, they struggle with what to prioritize which month. So to make that easy, what we have done, we have created a well-being calendar. Can you put that in the chat, the well-being calendar, so that people can download and you can reach out to us in case you need any help on. So that was just a small announcement we wanted to make. You can stop sharing if there's a technical challenge, that's okay. But put so there's a link in the chat. This is our well-being page, Enabling World, where you can avail more than 150, 60 unique programs that we run. So that's a small announcement we wanted to make. All right. So now towards the end, while we wait for any question, if you have to give one advice, Swati, if I have to ask you, if you have to give one advice to maybe the EAP partner, for example, right? Because a lot of companies use EAP partner for well-being services because they're professional, it is anonymous, it works out very, very well. What would that be if you have to give one advice? In view of the personalization and the current need that the employees have, what advice would you give?
I think when for the EAP partners, I think the services quality is extremely important. Right. So first, this is that definitely the coaches or the counselors or the legal professional or the financial coaches, they are getting their quality of those people needs to be extremely high. Because one decision wrong or one coaching gone wrong can create a little problem. So that's one. The second is about include lot of AI into your programs, because analysis and immediate analytics given to the people saying that, okay, these are your first top priorities, choose from them. And they should have a variety of programs that they can, like a survey of services, right? You can make your own well-being survey, right, to choose what they can choose from their programs.
All right. So,
and
so I think
and
anything else?
nonetheless data, given the fact that there is always a confidentiality and data privacy already there.
All right. Angela, if you were to give maybe one advice to maybe the manager, because, in this era, you have said quite a bit, but if you have to give one final advice to managers, because to me, that's an important link. I mean, you said it because, I mean, as a leader, sometimes you don't have access to all the employees, but as manager, you're working with them day in, day out, right? And you have a lot of responsibility. What is one advice you would give them?
My one advice is walk into the conversation, not away from it. If you don't address things quickly, they get to be big problems, and then are you even more nervous to have that conversation. So walk towards rather than away. When your gut feel as a manager is saying, oh, I want to avoid this person because, don't listen to that.
Great. I mean, it is tough to do, but it's a very simply put, but it is a reality. I mean, so absolutely, that's a great advice. And I think one thing, if I have to say, is that, well-being programs, they are not a substitute for creating a healthy workplace. And there's a difference in that, right? And we all, I mean, in our respective capacity as maybe HR leaders or business leaders or employees, can directly, indirectly contribute to creating a healthy workplace, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, well-being programs are maybe a reaction to a situation person has gone through, whether it's a burnout, creating a purpose in employees' life, right? providing assistance, coaching, guidance. These all things also help, right? Because organization is both sometimes a therapy when you're going through a lot of challenges in life. When you come to the workplace, find meaningful work, it can work as a therapy as well. But a toxic workplace can contribute to your mental illness or your wellness, in a negative way. It can negatively contribute to that. I think that's what we need to be. Then there'll be, this session will be recorded, is being recorded. We'll share that on our YouTube channel, which you saw on the screen. And there's a link in case you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you keep getting those updates. You're free to do that. You're welcome to do that. And before I close, which I'm 1 minute over, so a huge thanks to Swati, to you, for bringing your global perspective and a rich experience in this space. So thank you very much for doing that. And then there is a poll, small poll. We want to hear, how did you like this program? Was it useful, not useful to that? It's on a scale of maybe 1 to 10, and 10 is the highest. Don't reverse the order in your mind, right? So 10 is high, but give a very candid feedback of how you felt. And Angela, thanks to you, and especially on your perspective about the dynamics at the workplace, the role a manager or a leader can play, and how can they promote. And I like your your focus that it should be human connect, human connect. Don't depend everything on AI or a technology. They can be aid, but they can't substitute the human. Thank you very much for bringing those insights. And thank you, team, for coming over. And thank you, all the audience. I mean, Rashi and everyone, you are contributing actively to this discussion parallelly. So that's wonderful. And thank you, Sushil, and everyone else who helped in contributing and conceptualizing. This was Sushil's idea that we should do a topic. This should be the topic for discussion. And I hope together as a team, we were able to do justice to that. No easy answer. It is complex, but maybe you got some idea of how to go about it, right? So with that, we'll close the session. Thank you very much. Stay safe and keep creating a healthy workplace so that people don't have to use wellness program. So with that, let's close the session. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.